The attacker has one advantage. That's it. He has the initiative. If you take this from him, and if you start being proactive, looking all the time, how are they innovating? Even if it's not like a revolution, just evolution, okay? But you're constantly looking at what they're doing, then you're on the proactive side, and they don't have a chance.
Hi folks, James here, and welcome to the Spyro Circle, this time in collaboration with Forbes Israel. I've spoken to quite a few cybersecurity companies on this show, and more or less, they all say the same thing. We have to fight AI with AI. The amount of threats facing an enterprise is more than any human or team of humans can cope with, and we really are in an era where everything's about to change. So it was quite refreshing to hear a contrarian view, which came from Shahaf Galili from Mars Security. Shahaf has about 22 years of military experience in the IDF, specifically in the intelligence units, and he recently became a civilian again and started a company taking a more proactive approach to cybersecurity. He says it's all too reactive, and that a different approach needs to be taken to combat some of the threats that are being posed to enterprises and governments and businesses. He's a contrarian by nature and doesn't quite believe in the AI hype cycle. He's very articulate about that. Instead, while he accepts that the amount of attacks is increasing, the type of attacks isn't. It's kind of a history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes kind of situation. Anyway, we spoke about cybersecurity, his company, Mars Security, that he co-founded and is now the CEO of. And we spoke a bit about this Gartner report that highlighted some of the cyber threats, and we get into the details of some of those figures. So I hope you enjoy. Shahaf, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Happy to be here.
I'm really interested in your journey based on kind of where you started in the early days with your kind of army career and all the things you achieved there, which takes us and then taking us kind of to where we are today after so much experience and kind of that transition. So what I want to do, please, is I want to set the scene first for those who are listening and watching today. So you spent 22 years inside the Israeli military intelligence doing offensive security. Now you're building Mars Security, which is to help organizations defend themselves. So I want to understand how you went from army life to civilian/founder life. Like, talk us through your journey and how we got here today, please.
Yeah, for sure. Like you can say it's the regular journey just took a while longer because I did spend a lot of time in the IDF. I loved my service and I loved serving my country, and I got like amazing experience in what I did. So you of course you're doing something that is like important, but it's also self-fulfilling. Like you're doing something that is also very interesting. So it took a while to leave. Like 22 years is a long period of time. But I think that this transition from offense to defense, a lot of people are doing this. Okay, it's not that unusual in the cybersecurity community in Israel. I think that leaving the army at a later stage than most, I left when I was 39, which is it's considered old when you think about the Israeli high-tech community. It gave me a really good perspective on processes, and it also, I think, it gave me more like a better perspective on try to build yourself again as a civilian. So I took my time before founding a new enterprise, a new company. I worked in several places before. I got like a civilian experience, which I think it's super valuable for everybody leaving the army. And I think it was like a good long process to have.
Mm. Definitely. I mean, I don't want to go so far as to say it's totally unique because you're right. There is a life cycle of people who enter into the IDF, especially in those intelligence units, and coming out to become founders of companies and cyber companies.
Cybersecurity
So
company. Yeah.
sorry, yeah, it's not totally unique, but I think your duration in which you remained and kind of grew there. I mean, because 22 years is a career in and of itself, right? I mean, it you didn't have the kind of mandatory shorter time, and you didn't stay a couple of years; you stayed a couple of decades. Um, Looking back, what's something that you learned in those maybe later years as you remained there? What are some of the foundations there that you learned that best suited you into this life? You know, maybe some of the things that the founders who would have left earlier at an earlier stage would have found.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there are like two main pillars for that. One is professional experience, and cybersecurity and offensive cyber, that they change dramatically over time because it's a technological field, right? But there's still a lot of things that like experience and multi-year experience and seeing multiple different operations, techniques, methods, failing and succeeding over time is something that really builds you as a professional. And I think that you can't like replace this. Like you can't speed through this. So the longer you're going to spend in a field, in a technological field, you're going to get better. And experience is everything in these fields. And I'm seeing this today, like understanding tradecraft of attackers and how attackers think and operate, so that the technology might change, but the tradecraft is the same. It's been the same for multiple different years. And again, like just getting that experience on a very long period of time is super valuable. And I think that from the command perspective, then it's to be able to command big offensive units and to be able to command big groups of extremely talented people is a very good way to prepare you to a lot of the aspects of founding a technological company. A lot of this is different. The army perspective on multiple things is very different than the civilian one. As a civilian, you need to sell. Okay, that's like important. Of course, you want to help your partners and the organizations that you're selling to, but the main, like, we're here to make the company successful. And on the army, it's like totally different success criterias, right? But working with like super talented individual in a semi chaotic uh, organization or how things are going. So I think it gives you like an amazing experience to do these things, and I think that that's why a lot of the people that are moving from these places and areas in the army are going to do this like as a civilian. And again, you can't replace experience. The more chaos that you live through, the better you will thrive in chaos. So again, like doing this for multiple years, I think prepared me for a lot of what I'm doing today.
I love that. I love the idea of thriving in chaos. And anyone who's lived in Israel for the last 3 years, but also the
Oh, for
last,
sure.
78 years, would know exactly what you're talking about. Um,
100%.
and also, it compounds, right? Because it's not just one experience that you have; it's one experience in a cycle, which you mentioned, right? And we'll get into hype cycles later on. Believe me, but it's seeing these things repeat, right? And it's seeing these things. You start identifying patterns that it's the benefit of time and experience that gives you those things. So, talk me through where you are today, because you founded Mars Security last summer in 2025, and you've got $9 million in funding to do so. So, talk us through some of the things that you learned in that experience to get you here now, and some of the things that you folks are doing at Mars.
Yeah, of course. Mars is the natural process for us, for me and my co-founders Ran and Matan. because of that experience and what we saw when we were on the offensive side of things. I think that um, it's a totally different perspective, right? When you're doing something from the offensive side and the defensive side, and we saw this pattern that was so aggressive, I would say, and it always like was out there when we were operating. That once we left and we decided that we're going to found Mars, we said, okay, this pattern is something that we really want to try and fix or solve or add like a new technology that can work in this space. And what we saw is that we were doing a lot of stuff, and of course I can't give a lot of details on what we were doing, where and when, but we were doing a lot of things, and it always bothered us, like, how can they not see us? Like, we're making all these mistakes, and hackers make mistakes, like they make a lot of mistakes, like all the time. And so we're making all these mistakes, and we're trying to be stealthy and crafty. We're trying to do lateral movement, but to do it like in a very subtle way. But we're still like doing all these bad things that are creating all that noise, and they just don't see us. And that pattern kept repeating everywhere, anywhere. And we just understood that this entire space of detections and how to detect the little more advanced tradecraft and attackers just didn't evolve. It just stagnated for multiple different years, and we're still doing things like we're in 2015. And sure, there's like innovation, there's amazing companies out there, but we just saw like a huge like gap in where and how attackers are operating and how people are trying to detect them, that we said, okay, this gap just doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense even more today when we believe that there is the technology to solve for this. And there's been a lot of like progress in technology the past 3 years. Nobody needs to, we're all talking about like the progress in AI. And we said, okay, like this is a solvable problem. Let's tackle that one.
But why is that though? Why is there such a gap between what you say and what everyone else is saying? I'm going to single you out here. Where does that? Why are you the guy that's saying, "Hey, everyone has this wrong," or not wrong, but everyone is misunderstanding the diagnosis? Talk me through your thinking
I don't.
as to why you're the guy driving down the other side of the road.
First of all, I'm gonna be like super candid, and I don't think that there's a lot of novel ideas in cyber. Okay, like cyber, there's so many smart people doing this in Israel, in the world. It's a very big problem. It's the ecosystem of the digital world. So a lot of very, very smart brain power is into this, and I don't think that they're like super novel ideas. Okay, it's a lot about execution and really defining the problem, and just like solving it in a robust, scalable way. But I think that it's just a matter of where the perspective of the community is. And when you look at the life cycle, the technological life cycle, the solution life cycle, then the detection space has been active all the time. Amazing people working there, very good companies, powerful EDRs. Like, it's not stagnant at all. Like, there's a lot of innovation going in this space. But what it's lacking is the attacker's perspective. And that is not that common. Like, when you look at people that are building the big security solutions, most of them are amazing blue teamers. They came from the CISO side, they came from the IT side. Very smart people, very talented. They understand how organizations work, but they don't understand how attackers work. So to combine the real tradecraft with this multi-year experience and understanding how organizations are working, that is something that is not that common. And I think that when you're looking at that space, then a lot of companies and a lot of the technology and all of brain power is went to vulnerability management and how to secure your cloud and security by design and how to secure identities, how to secure AI. And that space of, okay, someone might be in. Now, how do I make sure that I see it? Did not really evolve. And when you look at the actual attacks that are out there, that's what's happening. This is how like organizations get breached. Okay, there are like multiple breaches today and multiple signals when you can catch these in the beginning before like the blast radius is very big, before they get to what they're trying to get, before they exfiltrate data, before they encrypt your network or create some kind of like chaos inside your organization. And this is not Mars Security saying. You can look at multiple different thought leaders in the community saying that the space of vulnerability management and security by design and microsegmentation is like has been very proactive, or it developed a lot, but the detection space has not reinvented itself. And that's what we're trying to do, because again, we think that there's a gap, and we think that this can be very effective today.
Yeah, wow. Talk us through exactly what a real successful breach may look like then, because if you strip away the marketing language and you kind of remove some of the buzzwords that may be around there, what is some of the things, what is taking place, right? What are some of the things that the people on the defense side need to look for?
So I think that first of all, it's hard to get real metrics on attacks, because you have a lot of like vendor marketing information, right? You also have like the researcher that are doing academic or semi-academic research into these spaces, and there's what's really happening out there. Okay, so I'm trying to balance like all the different perspectives, but I think that in the last couple of years, you see a lot of identity-based operations or hacks, where if in the 2010, 2015, even 2020, you saw a lot of like Windows-based malware, Linux-based malware, like the payloads were very sophisticated. Today, you see a lot of like lateral movement that is done only using identities. So tokens, API, credentials, stuff that has like, there's no real code that is left on the machines or on the servers. That's one. So what you have is the logins, the logins that are not supposed to be there, the logins from like locations that are not like okay, the lateral movement between different platforms. And that is something that we see a lot. And the entire supply chain space, which is, again, it's very, very common today. And when you look at the big, extensive campaigns today, they're supply chain based. So you infect or you create a backdoor using like a third-party vendor that operates in multiple different organizations. And through that, you laterally move into these organizations and exfiltrate data. And when you look at the current detection tools today, they're blind to this. Again, this is, I'm being, it's a big saying because of, like, there are very good detection tools overall, but this cross-medium lateral movement that attackers are doing today, from the endpoint to the cloud to the SaaS platform to Kubernetes, back to another SaaS platform, and then to the crown jewel, is something that the security ecosystem was not built to detect. Okay, because security platforms and security products work in silos, because that's how the community was developed, and this is how the market was developed. So you have EDRs, and you have SIEM platforms, and you have cloud protection platforms, and so you're missing the big picture, and attackers don't think that way. Like, they don't care that you have an EDR or a firewall or an identity solution. They're going to move laterally to where they can until they get to where they're looking for. And that cross correlation between different mediums is hard. And a lot of organizations are really challenged by this. And again, the entire detection ecosystem was not built for this challenge. It's new. Several
Yeah.
years, but overall, it's new.
Yeah. It's funny because I always I always thought that the way that I would frame it to people who I speak to a lot of cybersecurity people in the ecosystem naturally is kind of part of what I do. But when I speak to people outside of the ecosystem, and what I say is one of the things I've been quoted probably many times saying this is, which it's not unique, but the cyber attackers are the innovators because they're the ones that have to maneuver around defense systems. And what the cybersecurity teams or companies or vendors are doing are kind of chasing and following up and trying to match what the attackers themselves are doing. So it is a reactive industry in that sense. You've said before that attackers are mostly copying each other and that there isn't much innovation there, which goes against my thesis and goes against what I thought, which is great. I love to hear things like that. But I suppose I have a question. If they are copying each other, why haven't more vendors just figured out how they're copying each other? Why isn't this an easier problem to solve?
Yeah. So first of all, I hold a very strong thesis about the fact that they are copying each other, and I
love to hear different. I love to hear it
because I used to do it as a something that looks like a threat actor, that there is innovation on the attack side. Okay, that there is innovation, and there's like really cool stuff that is happening. A lot of it is like even genius when you look at it. But again, when you break down the chain and what really happened, a lot of it is the same. The process, the tactic is the same tactic. And I think that even though you understand it, to operationalize what I just said, so it's very challenging. Like to say, okay, I know that attackers will poison like a third-party package and use that to infiltrate my organization. That's easy. Everybody can say this to you now. Okay, even a couple of years ago. But to actually take this and apply this to your organization, and to make sure that you have the right telemetries and you have the right rules and they don't break, and that to just understand it is easy. To operate on it proactively, as you said, that's hard. It's a discipline thing. It's something that requires a lot of automation. It requires constant checks because you need to be good all the time. The attacker has one advantage. That's it. He has the initiative. If you take this from him, and if you start being proactive, looking all the time, how are they innovating? Even if it's not like a revolution, just evolution, okay? But you're constantly looking at what they're doing, then you're on the proactive side, and they don't have a chance. And this is what we're trying to do with Mars. We're trying to say, okay, so let's keep an open eye on that evolution that these threat actors are doing. Let's do it fast, okay? Not in weeks, in hours, in minutes. And the moment someone does something new or a little bit innovative, let's have the solution and the remediation automatically deployed in your organization in order for you to already be protected from this. And this way of thinking is not that common today, of saying, let me look at the patterns and try to be to make myself safe from the patterns. And I think that this is again, I wouldn't call it completely novel approach to how to do detection in cybersecurity, but not a lot of organizations and solutions are taking this route, and this is where we try to be innovative.
It's interesting. You've said a lot of things there that I find that I would pick up on. I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's great. It's turning the reactive into the proactive. And then I was kind of thinking that that your thesis is basically that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right? Like
I love
the
this.
Like the foundations
I'm
are
going
going
to
to be
use this.
there. Sorry, yeah, go for it. It's yours. In fact, that might be a good name for a security company, Rhyme Security, and then that can be the whole thing. But maybe Maybe they exist already.
Probably statistically, there is a security company named this way
Yeah, that's
because
what
there's
I'm
so
thinking as
many.
well.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true, and I love to hear how people get their names like that. So let's double tap on this then. Let's double tap on this thinking and this practice. It's threat
Yeah.
intelligence, right? It's like this is kind of embodying now everything that we've spoken about. Let's demystify that. Let's break it down. What is threat intelligence for someone who is unfamiliar with all of the? Hopefully, they've been up to date with what we've been talking about so far, but maybe we've lost a few people. What is threat intelligence in your words?
Fantastic. Uh, Threat intelligence, it's very simple. There are a lot of very good people and very good organizations and vendors that are sharing knowledge and information openly. Some of them are also selling this, but a lot, like 90% of it is public. And it's good, it's valuable. As I said, it's hard to operationalize, but actually there's a huge community of the good guys that are saying, okay, we found something malicious. Here's what it is. Here's how it operates. And here's how you guys can detect it or even stop it. And this community is huge. It's very proactive. And the question is, how do you take all this knowledge? And there's a lot of knowledge. There's like there's one of the challenges is how you find the relevant stuff that is relevant to you, and not like being overwhelmed by this flood of information, right? That's also a huge challenge. But it's accessible and everybody can use it, and some of the open source platforms are really great in delivering that knowledge, and it's up to date, and people are like giving like recommendations and helping each other. Um,
How up to
but
date is up to date? Is something 6 months ago already out of date, or what's the
well,
window?
so yeah, again, the people are very proactive. So like you can find when someone finds something malicious, sometimes it takes minutes and it's out there. Today
Oh,
with
so 6 months
Reddit
was probably a bit
and
was
Twitter,
probably
yeah, it was kind of a
ancient. Yeah,
yeah.
maybe I should have said 6 hours.
So 6 hours is good. 1 or 2 days is also okay. And look, attackers are moving really fast today. And this is not, again, I hate hypes, and we can talk about that. But they are moving faster. Not in the common way that you think, but to deploy an infrastructure, okay, like command and control servers, or to change your malware, or change like small things about your tradecraft. Today with AI, it's very easy. Once it took like a long period of time, like to set up like a campaign infrastructure, all the servers that you're going to leak the data to, and how you like mask yourself from like different security vendors that might find you. That was complicated in the past. Today, with AI and automation, you can do this super fast. So what you're seeing is that you're seeing like an attack or a threat campaign, and it's morphing. So it's not changing the modus operandi. It's still doing the same thing, but like the command and control servers are constantly changing. Okay, the binaries that it's dropping are changing. The how data is leaked outside of the network, that also changes, because it's easy today to do very, very fast. Now, if you have good threat intelligence, then you keep updating and you get all this information from the other good people that have seen all these changes. So you constantly change your detection and your protection. And again, this is something that you need to do very fast, and it's not really humanly possible to do. Like it doesn't really make sense to do this manually today, because the attackers are not changing it manually. They're using automation and AI, and you need to follow. Again, you have the information, it changes pretty rapidly. Now you need to change with it. And again, this is something that we're trying to solve for.
Hmm. It's fighting the AI with AI, right? I hear that a lot. It's fighting fire with fire. Without getting into
I like
anything that you without getting into anything that you can't discuss, because I don't want to trap you or get you in trouble, is there a piece of threat intelligence work that from your career, whether it was from the army or from what you're doing now, that has helped shape or reshape your thinking of defense? Um,
um well, I can't put my finger on something very specific because again, we've seen so much. I think that the chain, and again, this is not novel. Like a lot of people are going to say what I'm going to say. Supply chain is an effective way to get into highly fortified organizations is super effective. And it's very hard to identify. It's complex to detect and it's effective from the attacker side. And a lot of what we're doing is we're trying to help organizations monitor their third-party vendors and trying to deploy detections that can catch these things. But again, I could say this as a former offensive guy. Doing this is extremely efficient if you know what you're doing. And I think like we've seen this with the SolarWinds campaign back in the day, like how effective that was. And we're seeing it now, like the Axios campaign, the team PCP. Like there have been 5 or 6 major these like the past 2 months, effective ones. So again, I think it's something that people should like really look into. And I think the other stuff that we're seeing a lot, I wouldn't say that this is something that like I saw from my military tradecraft is again, everything around identities. Um, People will be absolutely amazed with how much of their credentials and information is out there on the dark web. It's absolutely mind blowing. And this is not true only for your, Facebook account or LinkedIn account. It's also true for the login into your organization or your email account in your org and stuff like that. And this is very useful for attackers. Like they use it to move laterally after they breach an organization. They use all of these like leaked credentials in order to expand their approach and to get to more relevant systems and to get to more interesting data. And that is also something that is extremely useful. And organizations are looking into how to detect this and block this for sure.
how can you prevent that?
So I don't think you can. I don't think you can. Again, being realistic, okay? And that is the huge debate between prevent and detect. And I have a very, very good friend whom I worked with in the Army for multiple years. He has an amazing company. I'm not going to say the name because I haven't like asked him, but they're doing prevention as a thesis, okay, to create a really good prevention methods into an organization. And we have this debate ongoing on prevention and detection. Both are right. But again, if you're asking me, um, it's almost impossible to prevent credentials leaking and info stealers and stuff like that. You need to have the capability to detect anomalous behavior in your network and stop it. It's possible today. It's possible. It's possible to understand the tradecraft, to understand these signals, and to deploy these detections, and to do this at scale and very fast. We have the technology today to do it, and I think this is the more realistic perspective on things than saying, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to block it. It's not going to happen to me." It's the assume breach mindset is something I really believe in, and again, it's coming from the field. Like there was never an organization that I wanted to get in, but I couldn't get in. My only fear was, am I going to get caught? So breaching, usually that's easy. Moving laterally, getting the information and not being caught, that is very hard. So yeah, like it's a constant debate. It's funny that you said that. So look, in all the organizations that I've been to, we had credentials stolen, and in some of them we had credentials used against us. It's extremely common. You just need to have the right mindset.
Wow. Wow. Spooky. You're giving me my hairs are raising on my arms. I want to draw this all together before we move on to the final piece of today's conversation, which is this Gartner report, which we referenced at the start of our conversation. I have one last question for you in this context, which is, as a commander in the army, you had to make a lot of high-stake decisions based on not complete information, I imagine. How does that compare to making either security decisions today or leadership decisions as a founder of a company? Like what does the idea of filling gaps to make decisions, like what does that look like for you?
Wow, that is a huge question. I can talk about this for hours. First of all, you need to feel comfortable in chaos. Life is chaotic, and again, this is my own perspective, so I'm not making any generalization. I'm saying what I think. I think that life is chaotic, and the more comfortable you feel in chaos, the better you're gonna do. And I think it really is the same in the military life and in the civilian life. Sure, the stakes are different, right? Of course, but you always need to make decisions when you don't have all the information. And the most dangerous thing to do, and this is true if you're investigating a breach in your organization, if it's true if you're conducting an offensive operation and you think that you might have been caught, and it's true if you're trying to make a decision which product line you need to invest more in your new startup, right? You don't have the answers. Targets are moving and evolving. There's a lot of chaos and like multiple unknowns. So first of all, you need to embrace it. You need to understand that this is life, and that like you must enjoy it. And I enjoy it. I love the chaos. And I love this sense of, okay, we need to just understand what we do know about reality and make the decisions according to this. So I always tried to not contemplate on multiple different scenarios. Just look at the evidence that I have and decide fast and move fast. And again, this is my thesis. I believe that an action, even if it's the wrong one, is always better than not acting. And looking for more data and more certainty, and that is true for being a commander in the army, running offensive operation, running defensive operation, and managing a company. An action will always be better than not taking an action because you're proactive and it will help you understand reality. So you need to act, and you need to have the flexibility to understand that you made a mistake and change. If you have these two, you're going to thrive in chaos. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I think Ran and Matan, my co-founders, they have this exact same mindset. So we work well in that perspective.
There's almost a Shakespearean idea in that, isn't there? Because, the idea of any action is better than inaction, or the problem of delay or indecision. I mean, that was Hamlet's fatal flaw, is that he could never make a decision, and was his downfall.
I love this. Yes.
Anyway, that's probably a topic for another. That's probably a route that we're not going to go down at this episode, anyway. But there is a Shakespearean idea there, and I always like it when Shakespearean ideas come up because they've passed the test of time. So it's our other thesis of history not repeating itself but rhyming. If it's been written about before, it's probably a reason why.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sure.
I'm digressing. I want to now dive a bit deeper into this Gartner report, the cyber threats in AI, and it kind of outlined some of these things that we've been speaking about. You've been famously anti-hype, and you push back against the Skynet level attacks that have often been talked about. And I looked at the report, and a lot of what it says backs up your thesis, right? And what we've spoken about now, which is that most AI-driven attacks are scaling. They're getting bigger, but it's scaling old tactics. They're not necessarily inventing new ones. So it backed that up. But I also wanted to highlight some other numbers, which was that deepfake social engineering attacks hit 41% of organizations on calls and videos, and exploitation of known vulnerabilities jumped from 22 to 31. So yes, they're scaling old attacks and not inventing new ones, but they are scaling them in a way that more people are concerned about. So how do you tackle those ideas? Because there is still a threat, even if it's not what maybe people are thinking.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I have to say, I think this is one of the best Gartner reports that I ever read, and like kudos for them. Well, about what you said, I think that first of all, I fully agree with the Gartner numbers and what you said. I think these are vectors that are used that are augmented by AI, and the phishing and the vishing and the deep fakes is new, being delivered at scale. It was like a niche issue 2.5 years ago. Well, phishing was always an issue, but now it's getting like extremely good. And that is scary. It's super effective. It's breaching even the best organizations. And it's becoming a huge, huge, huge problem. Okay. And we can talk about the prevention versus detection again about this. But if you look at what people are talking about, it's not this. They're talking about the sexy AI finding this new amazing vulnerability that was never seen by any security researcher, and being able to remotely exploit any application, any computer, any server. That is what people are talking about. That is yet to have happened. Like, we haven't seen this. Sure, we've seen Mythos, and it did a lot of like amazing things, and it's really good at like looking at software and finding bugs. These are all facts. But look at what is really happening out there. We're not seeing super new, novel remote code execution. We're not seeing these attacks happening. We're seeing the same things, just happening a little bit faster. We are seeing amazing threat campaigns that are delivering very, very good phishing at scale, and deep fakes in scale, and vishing, like voice fake in scale. These are new. These are scary, and these are only done by AI or like hugely augmented by AI. But everybody's still talking about vulnerabilities, and this is where I have the problem, because like we're missing the point. Everybody's talking about vulnerabilities and AI and vulnerabilities because it's interesting, it's sexy. Vulnerabilities are very easy to measure, right? Also, there's a lot of like vendor augmented hype around this. Like everybody's that is doing vulnerability management and secure coding tools and stuff like that. But I really feel that like it got too much of the conversation going, and we're not looking at what's like really happening out there. Mars is looking on what's happening out there. Like, we're trying to help you with the real AI augmented attacks. And I think that, like, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I'm not saying that we're not going to see these super sophisticated new vulnerabilities being researched and exploited by AI. It's not today. I'm not sure it's going to be tomorrow. So we need to focus on what's happening today first. That's, again, my thesis.
But it is coming, I think. I don't know. Like, it's to continue the Skynet metaphor, like Judgment Day.
It's 2027. Judgment Day. That's, I think, April 27, something like that in the movies. So it's
yeah,
nearly...
hopefully they pushed it back a bit further, I think, in one of the movies. I don't know. That franchise kind of went off the rails. Anyway, we're digressing again. I do want to say that I do want to point to one thing that the report said very quickly before we wrap up, because I know that we're running out of time. There was an espionage campaign in the report. It was an LLM-run attack that pulled data from Mexican government systems. You probably know what I'm referring to.
Amazing, yes.
Yeah, I mean, amazing, but also frightening, right? Is that a sign of things to come? From what I understand, it was kind of just one person on his computer using an LLM, and he hacked a government.
Yeah. Again, first of all, Gambit Security did the research on that. Kudos to these guys. Amazing research. I think this is exactly what I'm talking about. When you look at the Mexico attack, it was highly augmented by AI. There was still hands on keyboard. It wasn't like an agent doing everything from start to finish. And really quick, it deployed known tactics, known techniques. It did everything that a hands-on hacker would do. It just did it at scale. So in the past, you needed like a 15 people team in order to do that. One guy did it. Okay. And that is the interesting and cool thing about it. Nothing novel, just like really automated. It did a lot of noise. You could have detected it multiple steps of the way, but it wasn't detected. So I think, again, we're not looking at this like new, super sophisticated stuff. We're seeing the same things deployed faster at scale. That's scary. That is super, super scary. But we need to be focused on what's really happening out there. And if you're going to look for Skynet, you're going to miss this Mexico campaign. That's what I'm saying.
That is a good closing line. I love that. Shahaf, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I could talk to you about this topic, but also about some of the fun topics that we kind of veered off along the way. I was trying to keep us focused on this, but we'll definitely have to do another episode in the future. I do want to end quickly, as I often do, which is with a quickfire round. So I want to shoot some questions at you as quick as possible, and I want you to reply with as little thought as possible. First instincts, shoot back at me. Offense or defense, which is actually more fun?
Offense.
What's the best piece of advice you got from a commanding officer?
Love the chaos.
What's the most overhyped term in cybersecurity right now?
AI is the overhyped cybersecurity. Yeah.
Is there a technology that you think is underhyped?
Not really. Not really. I think we have too much hype overall.
If Mars security didn't exist, what's the one tool you'd want every security team to have?
I think Claude Code is the one tool that every security team should be using today.
Okay, finally, quick word association. Someone says AI hacker. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Just normal hacker.
Okay, Shahaf, I said that was my last question and I lied. I have one last question for you, which is, what is the best way for people to follow you, stay up to date with you, follow your insights, and keep in touch?
So my LinkedIn, Mars Security LinkedIn, I think that's the best places. You can get a link for our website and then enjoy all of our content.
Definitely. I will be sure to put those links down at the bottom so everyone who's watching or listening to this can follow along and keep up to date. Shahaf, thank you so much for your time and insights today. It was super interesting, and I really hope we reconnect and follow some of those stems and see what happens. I hope Judgment Day doesn't come, at least not so soon next year. And I can't wait to see what you folks are up to. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you. It was a pleasure.